let's catch up with the SAP Cloud Platform SDK for iOS. Hi, I'm Ian Thain. Thank you very much for joining another SAP CodeTalk, and I have Stan Stadelman in San Ramon, California. Stan, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Excellent. So we're still in our home offices, but I wanted to catch up with you because I was speaking to our developer advocate, Kevin Musig, last week, and he mentioned something really interesting. But before I give all the game away, I wanted to put you on the spot and ask whether you could give me a comparison or at least, sort of the difference, should we say, between UIKit and SwiftUI.
Yeah, so UIKit is the user interface framework for iOS for 13 versions, 12 versions, I guess. It's imperative. And kind of the classic pattern is that a lot of applications use logic related to the state of the components to drive the user experience. So there's a lot of checking of, here's the value of this text field, here's the is enabled or is selected value of this particular button or control. So it's extremely imperative. And SwiftUI was launched last year on stage at the Worldwide Developer Conference. And it is a declarative user interface paradigm. And it does an extremely good job of isolating the state of the components from the application. So an application developer actually no longer has access to the state of the controls. So it forces you as a developer to put your to externalize your model, and it results in really good data flow between the model and the user interface.
What about the cross-platform aspect to this all? Is there anything there, Stan?
Yeah, I mean, this is really interesting because Apple launched the Catalyst OS. They announced it 2 years ago. They launched it last year, which allows UIKit developers to take the same code base, the same user interface code base, and run it natively on Mac OS. And this really is a strategic topic to say, okay, I've got 10 million iOS developers. Mm-hmm. Let's say, and I'm rough estimating, let's say I have an order of magnitude fewer for Mac. So this is an ecosystem play. SwiftUI is also cross-platform. And not only does it support iOS and Mac, but it also supports Watch. And so this, I think, from a future-looking perspective, really makes sense in terms of being able to address all the devices in the Apple ecosystem.
Okay. I think actually in our last code talk, we mentioned a little bit about it. And you were saying, obviously, Fiori for iOS has been our model in the past, and that has been very much part and parcel of using UIKit. So just remind the audience again what's happening with regard to SwiftUI and Fiori for iOS going forward.
Yeah, so that's a two-part answer. So we released version 5.0 of the Cloud Platform SDK for iOS in February. And at that point, we dropped support for iOS 12. So we support iOS 13 and higher. And that opened up the ability for us to adopt the iOS 13 only features, SwiftUI and Combine. And so we, at this point, are starting to adopt SwiftUI in our internal implementation of new controls or even fixes to existing controls, so that even though developers are still consuming the UIKit-based interfaces that they're familiar with, they're getting some of the benefits of the SwiftUI implementation. We're also simultaneously starting to develop net new components with a SwiftUI interface as well. And we're doing this in the open source community. So this is kind of the new and exciting announcement.
And this is where actually Kevin Musig comes into the picture, because he was actually Chantamine said, yeah, we've got this SwiftUI open source sort of gig happening, and I'm thinking, right, I've got to get on a code talk with Stan Stadelman, and this is where we are. So tell us a little bit more and deeper into that, Stan.
Yeah, it's terrifically exciting because, I mean, one of the asks of a lot of our developers over the years have been for an open source access to some or all of the Cloud Platform SDK for iOS. And this is for a couple of reasons. I mean, as a developer, you know, I'm a lot more comfortable if I have access to the implementation. I can, you know, make enhancements, fix bugs if I need to. I can fork. I think forking is probably one of the more significant dimensions of this. And so this project is actually on public github.com, /github.com. And so, you know, we can finally participate in that open source community as a group of iOS developers, which is really exciting.
Okay, so I'm pretty certain we're not going to bore the ocean in the early stages. So what are we starting with first?
So we're starting with charting. So SAP acquired a company, Rombi, a few years ago. Rombi was kind of the best in breed in on-device visualization. And they had a charting library that we were using in Fiori for iOS, which was really quite good. It had very good user interactions and a good set of charts. That said, there are still some additional charts that we wanted to implement, you know, things like donut and radius and, you know, stacked bar, et cetera, et cetera. And so we were kind of making that evaluation of, you know, do we keep going on this code line, or, you know, SwiftUI is really beautifully suited, honestly, for things like plotting. And so it's a natural fit for charts. And so we've been working over the past 3 months to implement some new charts and also re-implement some of the existing Rombi charts in SwiftUI. And so this module is part of the open source project. The other thing that we're working on is a renderer for integration cards. So integration cards are a Fiori element, and the cards are similar to classic UI5 overview page cards in the sense that they have kind of a similar look and feel, and they're originally designed for dashboards. The integration card elements, though, differ in that they are intended to be more modular. So they can actually be packaged as a card bundle, so that the data is also either in line or bundled as a relative resource. And so this opens up a number of opportunities for things like SAP Mobile Cards utilizes this pattern. And in the SDK, we're looking at scenarios of also kind of dashboards with inline and offline content. And also, I think forward-looking, I think these probably play a fairly significant role in an AR type of experience. So I think it's a big deal in that dimension as well.
Stan, thank you very much for joining me today. And I'm sure, as always, we'll have you again on a future Code Talk.